I'm Rabyd, otherwise known as the Rabyd Atheist, a former pastor turned atheist, now compassionate anti-theist. Welcome to my channel. Feel free to like or dislike the video as you see fit, so feel free to hit those buttons. Feel free to comment below, and I would appreciate it if you would subscribe to the channel and hit your notification bell for more content as it is released. You're also free to share my videos as much as you like. The purpose of this channel is educational in regards to deconversion and atheist issues and the Bible, theology, and a little politics thrown in from time to time in relationship to those issues. Today I just want to do a little bit of a rabid ramblings on some of the most common bad arguments I've heard from theists. And part of this is in an effort to kind of, for those of you that like to use my comment section to make some of these same bad arguments. I'm just kind of saving you as a primer. Now, when I first started this channel, I did a video that had a challenge to theists. I don't know if I'll post that video here. It's old and it's not completely a reflection of anything that I do these days, but I might. But I want to kind of go over some of that again because I think some people, whenever they see an atheist channel, they make a lot of assumptions. And a lot of those assumptions are really bad arguments. And so today is these are the most common bad arguments that I hear from theists and why they're bad and what they could do to correct them. I'm trying to help you theists out. Last week I did a thing on apologetics, why I didn't like apologetics and what they needed to improve. And now I'm just trying to help out anybody who believes in God in general, why atheists don't accept your arguments and all that. The first one is argument from ignorance, probably more commonly known in atheist circles as God of the gaps. This basically happens when somebody says, and using as an example, the atheist says, well, we still don't really know what the singularity is that started the Big Bang. You don't get to run in there and say God. Okay, that's an argument from ignorance, or more commonly known as the God of the gaps. You don't get to just put your conclusion in there because one other conclusion is I don't know or eliminated. This is true. Let's say you prove something is proven wrong. Evolution has gone through major modifications before, and sometimes the theories get changed in such a way that, what was originally thought 10 years ago is now wrong. But a lot of it was just working theory or working with insufficient or incomplete data. That doesn't mean that just because that was proven wrong that you get to put God's creative power in there. You don't just get to do that. It's kind of really interesting how people do that, because you don't just get to put your thing in there because the burden of proof still rests on the person making the claim. I know I've gotten into this fight twice in my comments section, I think, one of which I banned from the channel because he became pretty ad hominem-y, which I'll get to in a minute, but he kind of started, calling people stupid and their arguments stupid, and it's like, yeah, that's kind of against my rule of the channel. So, the burden of proof still remains on the theist. And I know I used to disagree with that for a while as a theist, but then the more I thought about it, the atheist really isn't making a claim. They're just saying that they haven't been given sufficient evidence. So it's my job to give them sufficient evidence as a theist. So the burden of proof became my burden. Now, the example I've used before is, let's say I came up to you and I said, I just saw a leprechaun yesterday. I caught him. He gave me a map to the end of the rainbow, and there I went and I found the pot of gold and grabbed some gold. If I were to make that claim, is the burden of proof on me to prove it, or is the burden of proof on you to disprove it? Well, the burden of proof is on me to prove it. And I could do that if it was true by, producing the piece of paper that was a map to where the pot of gold was, taking that person to that pot of gold, showing the gold, or pulling out one of the gold coins out of my pocket and saying, yeah. Or if, even better, if the leprechaun's still around, show him the leprechaun. The same burden of proof lies on the person who says there is a God. He loves you very much. Here's his book, holy book, that tells you how to live. If you live this way, you'll go to heaven. If you don't, you'll go to hell. There's a lot of similarities between what I just said and my leprechaun story. You have to prove that there's a God. You have to prove that he does indeed love you. You have to prove that the Bible or whatever holy book you use is his word to humanity. You have to prove somehow that there is indeed an afterlife and what the nature of that afterlife is. The burden of proof is on the theist. Sorry, you're making the claim, prove your claim. Okay, and that's the true of any person who makes a claim. If a scientist comes up with a hypothesis and makes a claim, they have to prove the claim. They're not they're not going in there and saying, my claim, my hypothesis is true until somebody proves it false. It's their job to prove it true. Okay. Another argument I get is any version of Pascal's wager. Wouldn't it be better to take a chance and bet on God? I did this argument early on in this channel. It's still, to me, a really lousy argument for a couple things. Number one, it creates a false dichotomy. It's not just a question of not believing in God. It's not believing in the 10,000 things on the roulette wheel. And in reality, everybody then is gambling. I'm not gambling by being an atheist. In my opinion, I'm just refusing to put money on the wheel. Okay, I'm not going to place that bet because I think it's a lousy wager. I think the odds of me being right are pretty slim. But all of you seem to be very content to put, your money down on one number when there's 10,000 of them. Because what if for you Christians, what if the Islamic people are right? For you Islamic people, what if the Christians are right? What if both of your screwball and the Hindus are right and you're going to end up doing this stuff all over again? And because you missed the boat, you're going to redo it, your current caste or whatever. What if you're all wrong? What if the ancestors are what really lives? What if Odin is the one that's really in charge? Are you really going to be screwed? Yes. Okay, because you're not just gambling, yes or no. It's not a flip of the coin. Pascal's wager, in my opinion, is bad because of the false dichotomy, because that's not really what the question is. The question is, which of these religions do I put my bet on that actually is going to work and is true and which is verifiable? Not, atheism versus all the religions. In my opinion, atheists are just people that have decided not to sit down at the roulette wheel and place a bet. Until you prove to us why we should sit down at the table and place a bet, that's kind of where we're going to stand. Another common tactic, I guess, is straw manning. My favorite straw man of all time is, it's just a theory. That's a straw man. That's not what scientists are saying when they use the word theory. This kind of leads into not defining terms, but when you say something like that, you basically have shown that you don't understand the argument. A theory, for instance, in scientific terms is different than a theory the way we use it commonly or colloquially. A theory in scientific terms is the highest form of honor, that you can get for a body of knowledge. They're saying the knowledge that the truth of this is so extensive that you have to do that. And what I mean by straw manning here is you're not really defining your terms of what they mean. You're placing your own definition of the term instead of the definition that people are using. If you want to create a stronger argument, you should do what's called steel manning an issue. In other words, go find out what they're saying in truth and then make it stronger. And then if you can still debunk it, you've now debunked a stronger argument and your argument becomes stronger. And a lot of theists don't seem to want to play that game. And that's what kind of makes me think that they're talking out their ass. Okay, because they don't, I used to steel man theist arguments as a theist all the time. I had to in order to keep my faith alive. But eventually I came to a point where no matter how much I steel manned a theist argument, there was an argument against it that was better. And when I realized that, my faith kind of fell apart. The argument that got it going was, sin is unreal. But when I really look at it, that was just one of the questions. The other one became, the Bible. Yeah, it's not really the word of God. I can't prove that. No matter how much I steel man the Word of God, it's got some major problems. I can't get past the fact that sin is a made-up concept. Jesus Christ's redemption is a made-up concept. And the whole idea of heaven and hell and God's punishment really are kind of screwball. And when you really rationally consider them, and they just don't make any sense. And after a while, you realize that obedience is just a thing that people do. It's not right or wrong in and of itself. And faith is a dishonest position because you're asking me to believe in something you can't prove, or you're believing in something you can't prove. And faith to me is really self-delusional now. I look at it as a way that religion causes people to self-delude by saying that they have faith. And of course, the whole straw man thing usually is caused by the fact that people don't go in to look at the definition of terms. One of the big things I see with creationists is they define terms a lot of times according to the way creationists define them, not the way that the person that holds the position defines them. If you really want to steel man your opponent's argument and have a better argument for yourself against it, you need to go and look at what your opponent's definition of that word is. And okay, let's talk about evolution from an evolution, a person who believes or trusts in evolution being true. Look at it from their perspective. What are they really, really saying? And along with that, a lot of people go, well, I'm not going to do that because they're just, there's a grand, glorious conspiracy. Conspiracy theories are fun and all, but most of the time what's happening in your face is pretty evident. So that's kind of the way it goes there. Of course, my personal favorite is ad hominem, which I don't really allow on this channel. In fact, I'm just putting it out there again. If you ever feel like in the comments section you've been personally attacked, just let me know. I'll block the person who did it, and I won't give a warning either. The reason ad hominem is so bad for me is, one, I think it's the most common fallacy that human beings use. If you have to resort to name calling, that means you've run out of argument, in my opinion. That means you've got nothing left. And to me, ad hominem is just the most common knee-jerk reaction to not wanting to be wrong. Well, there must be something wrong with that person's character. I've gotten that all the time. I was in an argument on Facebook the other day, and, we were talking about Pascal's wager, and the guy just, well, I don't trust you. If you were 20 years of ministry and gave it up, that must mean that there's something wrong. And it's like with you, wrong with me. And I'm like, wait a minute. How is it arrogant to change your mind, or how is it bad to change your mind about something if you've studied it in great detail? It seems like a humble person is this person that goes, studies something out, maybe has a strong opinion one way, but after they study the actual thing that they have an opinion about, they change their opinion. To me, that has a lot more weight. And so ad hominem takes a lot of forms. You attack people's character. You go after atheists and call them names. I've seen that so many times I've lost count. You call them dumb, stupid. If you don't have anything more than name calling, I'm going to say that you don't have an argument at that point. You just don't. The other thing about that is insinuating what I think. You atheists just think this. No, not necessarily. One of the favorite ones I get with my deconversion story when people watch it and comment away from the channel is, well, you must not have really believed or must not have been really sincere in your belief. One, it's an argument from ignorance, and it's also ad hominem. You're insinuating something about my character that, somehow I wasn't really genuine. That's an insinuation about character. And you are making an assertion about something you can't possibly know. Argument from ignorance. You don't know what was going on in my head, and you don't know what it is. If you really wanted to make a good argument, you would dismiss this argument yourself and basically say, don't know Ed, but I'm going to steel man that he was a sincere believer. Okay. And then we're going to go from there. Okay. So we have Ed as a sincere believer. He really has believed, and now he doesn't. That would be steel manning your argument against ad hominem and against this, argument from ignorance of whether I really was a Christian or not. You don't know that. I would counter that argument, though, with my own testimony. 40 years a Christian, 20 years as a minister, went to Bible college, went to theological seminary, became a pastor. Why did I do all that if I wasn't sincere? And why would it be insincere for me to leave it? Because after studying it for 20 years and being part of it at 20 years and getting the degrees, you suddenly realize that everything that these people argue for is flawed and fallacious. There's no proof for it. You're arguing for an imaginary character. That to me is more honest. I lost a lot by becoming an atheist. I walked away from a lot of friends and a lot of people that I was close to, and a lot of people turned their back on me. So, there's a lot of emotional baggage that goes with it. It would have been safer and, quite frankly, easier just to keep the lie going, okay? But I didn't, okay? And to insinuate something about my level of salvation being sincere or not, this is a terrible argument. It combines the worst two forms of argument, in my opinion: argument from ignorance and argument ad hominem, personal attack. You're insinuating something about my character, and you're doing it, insinuating stuff that you think you know that you can't possibly know. So it would be better for you to say, you know what, Ed, I believe you're a sincere believer, and I believe your record shows that you were a sincere believer. So I'm not going to go down that road because that's not a good argument. That would be the way to respond to that. But a lot of people just, they think that when you say you don't believe, you're attacking the fact that they believe. I don't do that. I'm a compassionate anti-theist. What I mean by that is I understand why you're holding your beliefs. You have a lot of personal and emotional reasons to do so. I did for years. Okay. I did that. Okay. I'm not saying I don't understand. What I am going to do is call out when your ideas are full of shit, because that's what needs to happen. And if you want to prove to me that they're not full of shit, then you need to argue better. And that's what this video is about. I am trying to help you out. Okay, I'm trying to get you past the petty, stupid, childish arguments and get to some meat here. Give me something that I can chew on that I haven't heard before. This is kind of my annual appeal to please give me something that I haven't seen or heard before. Now, along with that, a lot of you suggest a lot of reading books and stuff like that. Let's just assume that I've read some of the best apologists out there, that I've read some of the best apologetic materials in Bible study classes and apologetic classes. And, I don't consider the professors I learned from to be unreasonable people. And yet, when it came to why they believed in God, it was purely subjective. I don't remember having a conversation where the question came up, why do you believe in God? That at the end of the day, it really just wasn't a subjective answer. It was a Pascal's wager thing. So all those arguments, in my opinion, are bad ones. And if you want to get better at talking with me and trying to convince me about the truth of what you have to say, then you probably should avoid them, because it gets really hard to say this stuff over and over and over again. It just really does. And, sometimes, there's going to come a point where if I get too many comments, I'm going to just say, guys, if I feel the comment is ad hominem, if I feel it's argument from ignorance, if I feel you're not defining your terms, if I feel you're straw manning my position, all that stuff that I just said, I'm just going to skip it. Okay. Because I'm looking for good discussion about why I should believe in God. Prove to me your claim that God exists. That's a pretty good start. You can't prove anything else about the Bible or God's plan for my life until you actually prove that he exists. And it seems to me if he was an all-powerful, all-knowing, all-present, particularly all-present creator, that evidence would be everywhere. But yet we have come up with naturalistic explanations that fit the facts for almost everything. And our gaps are getting a little bit smaller. But you don't get to push God into those gaps just because you want him to. I say all that to say, I appreciate everybody here who comes and civilly debates these things. Sometimes you'll see me get a little snippy in the fact that I'm gonna cut hard, and that's because I've seen, I try to get to the point. I'm kind of blunt like that. If you meet me in person, I'm a little bit more, feel you out, kind of. But when I'm on my ideological soapboxes, I tend to be pretty blunt and go right for the throat. And that's because I like to end arguments quickly. Uh, you know, if you're going to fight a battle, make it quick and swift. I think Sun Tzu said something to that effect. And, make sure that you're really defining your terms and do what you need to do. And then, my personal belief is as you actually study those arguments and try to steelman the arguments, that are made when you present your position and the atheist makes his argument against it, you can steelman that. And I believe very strongly you'll find, like I did, the more I steelmanned the bad guys, the supposed atheist position, the more I realized that it made a hell of a lot of sense. And it didn't take much effort to make those arguments stronger. Whereas every time I tried to play apologist or pretend that the Bible was inerrant or something like that, it got harder and harder to do because the evidence was overwhelming that a lot of those things aren't true. And that just got too bad for me. And so within all of that, of course, in civil discussion, I will always make the effort to convince you to be an rabid atheist like myself. And in the meantime, this is Ed Rabyd, also known as the Rabid Atheist, signing off and wishing you a good day.